So I want to get started. For those of you I have not met yet, my name is Kaylin Risvold, and I am the President and CEO of the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us for our listening session today. A couple thank yous. I do want to say a huge thank you to our Board of Directors. Many of the members of our Board of Directors are here. If you want to wave your hand, thank you for joining us today and your leadership. We also have many members of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So you guys wave as well. Our DEI committee started in January and is just a fantastic group of passionate people who are working really hard. Very fortunate to have them. The chair of that DEI committee is Kim White, who is here with us today. Kim is also the executive director of the Career Networking Center. We're going to hear from her in a little bit. And I also want to say thank you to our elected officials. We have some elected officials that will be joining us as well. So thank you to everybody who signed up. I'm going to go over kind of how this is going to go, and we're going to adjust and work together to really have a good, productive conversation. I ask that you stay on mute, and this is a listening session after all, so I'm going to be quiet real soon. And I want to hear from you. I want to hear your stories, and I want to hear some ideas of how we as the business community can help make Naperville, help make our whole area more inclusive. So I'd love to be able to hear some of those stories. So to sign up to chat, to sign up to speak, as I mentioned, you're going to put your name in the chat. So go to the chat and type your name in. And what we'll do is we'll say, you know, Kim, you're speaking first. Linda, you're on deck, and kind of give you a few minutes. About 2 minutes to speak. We do have a little bell to make sure that we can go through as many people as possible. And just want to hear kind of a story, any stories that you have surrounding the business community and something that we can do to help. The best thing that I hope to come out of this is a greater understanding for each other and some action items. Hoping things can be fixed or worked on soon, but what are things that we can do to put in our 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year timeline to help make this entire community better? We want some lasting change, and we're going to start that by having a good conversation. In addition to the people who sign up to speak, we do have 3 special community speakers who will be speaking. I mentioned Kim White, who's our chair of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Is going to have a statement. Mayor Steve Jericho is going to come on and have a statement. And the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at North Central College is here with us, Dr. Abiodun Goke Pariola, and he's going to speak as well. So really looking forward to hearing your stories, and put your name in the chat, and we're going to get started because it's our job to listen and to hear some good stories and whatnot. I may start and pitch it right over to you, Kim. You had a great story that you told me yesterday, and it's kind of a great example of how I hope today goes, of telling a story and something that we can all learn and go forward. So I'm going to toss it over to Kim, who again is our chair of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So thank you, Kim.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Kaylin, and thanks everyone for joining the call today. As Kaylin mentioned, I'm the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the Chamber, which started this year. And Kaylin, I just want to thank you for starting this new committee. You know, the Chamber, I don't need to tell everyone on this call, is a leading chamber in our state and in our country. And by taking this step, it really shows that the Chamber is taking the lead on DE&I. DE&I should really be at the forefront and not an afterthought. It's critically important to the growth and success of businesses. So thank you again, Kaylin, for starting this. I am thrilled to be joined on this call by many members of our committee. Kaylin had you guys raise your hands or wave, so do that again. There's 17 of us, very passionate community members that make up this committee. We meet monthly on the first Tuesday of every month. And we had an opportunity when we met in January and February to really focus on what our mission statement, our impact statement is. And so I want to share that with you. Our mission is to foster an awareness and understanding of various perspectives and cultures to create a sense of community and belonging for all. We strive as a committee supporting the Chamber, we strive to be a facilitator and a connector of the best resources for businesses to utilize when seeking to understand and embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. We strive to educate and implement best practices in Naperville to enable businesses, residents, and visitors to feel respected, honored, acknowledged, and understood. And we also strive to lead by example by creating awareness and an environment that empowers positive change. We've already had our first event, and that was, we kind of pivoted a little bit because of COVID. So our event was diversity, equity, and inclusion in the time of a pandemic. And we wanted to bring in speakers to talk about how do you restore operations and emerge with a DEI lens, defining the new normal and overcoming obstacles. It was a great event. We had over 50 community members on the call and a lot of great feedback. So thank you all for those who joined that call. You know, I just want to end by saying, I know I've taken a couple of calls from people who said they were going to be on today and share some things, but I wanted to say, you know, it's no secret that Naperville has been in the news for some racially charged incidents. And if we're doing things right, those incidents really should not define us. That means we must confront them, talk about them, and take action steps to ensure that things don't continue to happen. It's really about building trust, which is something my husband always says, building trust, but that is so important. The incidents that you all are aware of, they aren't unique to Naperville. Things that happen aren't unique to Naperville. These things happen in communities all over the country. But we need to not turn a blind eye. We need to not say these are one-off incidents. We need to not say these are isolated incidents. That is not being helpful to the process. Instead, we, especially as a chamber and a city, we have an opportunity to be leaders in this area, and we have an opportunity to affect change. I know the mayor's on the call, and I'm thankful that the city has created a new mission statement that values diversity by creating an inclusive community, and I'm happy to really be a part of this community, and I'm happy that that new mission statement has taken place. So that's something that all of us as community members, business owners, can really look to as we look to create businesses that are welcoming and values diversity and equity and inclusion for everyone. So thank you for that. I'm sure I'll probably answer a few questions later, but thank you. Thanks, Caitlin.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. And Candace, I'm going to have you speak, followed by Nate. And again, just type your name in the chat because we want you to speak up and hear your stories. There are so many people here at the table who want to hear your concerns, but also want to hear ideas of what we as a business can do to really act meaningfully right now. So I'm really looking forward to having some more of those conversations. So Candace Henning, I'm going to let you speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Kaylin and Kim, for your leadership. Gosh, getting emotional already. I wanted to share that I have had at least 2, if not more, conversations with really good friends of mine recently. These are people that are very open-minded, very intelligent in the corporate world, not necessarily in Naperville, but live here. And luckily they trust me, and they've come to me and they say, Candace, I don't really get it. I don't get the racism. I don't see it. And we were able to have a really lovely, which I'm really proud of, actually, conversation around it, where I was able to share everything I've heard, what I've seen, and really encourage them to learn more and to ask more and to be open-minded. And they were good conversations, but I don't know, it scared me, the fact that these friends of mine didn't see it and were having doubts. And I thought, geez, no wonder so much of the world is struggling as well then. And so I don't have answers, which has been frustrating me a little bit, but I really tried to relax into that and myself just really go into learning and listening. But I just wanted to share that I thought, and maybe I'm just stating the obvious to all of you, but just such an opportunity to really help people really see this and understand it with a lot of kindness and compassion. So that was it.
I agree. Thank you, Candace. And I think that we're seeing that here. We have more than 100 people on the call, people who want to listen. And speaking of, I want to do more listening. So Nate Alberti, who's another member, and Candace is a member of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So thank you for that and speaking up. And I'm going to toss it over to Nate now.
All right. Thank you, Kaylin, and thank you for bringing this committee to fruition and really giving us the opportunity to really focus on this. And Kim, I want to mirror a lot of what you said as far as what we're trying to do as a diversity Equity and Inclusion Committee. I'm actually got voluntold to be the program chair of the committee. So I've been doing a lot of the programming or helping organize a lot of the programming for this committee. And as Kim mentioned, we had a great first program that was really just focused on, really having organizations look within and say, hey, what do we have as far as policies and, focused on diversity, equity, inclusion. So it made me look at my own company and say, what does my company have that offers, as far as policy or the opportunity to be a more diverse organization? And we didn't have much. So I reached out to HR a couple weeks ago, and I actually got appointed to be part of a task force to help the organization or corporation as far as issues with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's already helped me, from a personal standpoint, whereas I kind of just looked at it from the beginning as how can it help the community, how can it help others around me in the business community, is how I looked at it. And I feel like the leadership has done a really good job in Naperville as far as raising awareness of the issues and responding to the issues. So I thank everybody on this call for all those things. But it's also taught me that I need to be a part of that I need to be more involved. It can't just be the mayor, it can't just be a committee. It's got to be everybody together, working together to make change. So.
Absolutely, you're right, Nate. And again, thank you for your work on DEI. Raina from Neighbor Settlement, I have you set to share a story and suggestion, and then we'll hear from Leslie and Stephanie. But Raina, I want to be able to toss it to you.
I will tell you, I'll start with one story, and it is pertinent to your institution per se. I know of an individual who at one point came to me and shared the story that the person had been a part of the chamber for a while and sought to have some leadership. And the process was started, and the suggestions were made and the nominations were made, and was later told that it wasn't going to happen. And I think we can all understand the reason why. Now, this was several years ago. It wasn't within the last 4 years or anything like that, but it is something that is hidden behind what we all see. And I think sometimes that is really the difficulty. I will share then my story. When we started to do the exhibits for our Asian community and our Indian community, there was some resistance as well within our community for doing that. And I also think there was a lack of trust from that community about whether we really were sincere in really wanting to tell their story. And it took us a while, and it took long conversations and several meetings for them to frankly trust us that we wanted to be able to tell their story through their eyes and through their words. So this idea of building trust that Kim has talked about, I think is truly the most important thing. And with that, what we have found out is that it does have to be slow, and it has to be very deliberate, and it has to be very much in partnership with the people that you're affecting, because other than that, it doesn't work quite well. They have to be involved from a collegiate perspective, and not just from let us tell your story, at least, you know, from us, from what we do. And I am these are difficult times, but I think in difficult times is when we grow the most, because it is when we must reflect the most. And I can tell you that I have lived in Naperville since 1990. And I am Latino. I immigrated to this country many years ago, but I am as American as they can be. My children were born here. I am an American, and I am very proud to be an American. But there's not a lot of my story that I see, even in the museum that I run. And so I think it's time that we actually bring those histories out. We have amazing people of so many diverse areas. I mean, in terms of professions, we have the man that helped to desegregate a school. He and his brother, as little children, desegregated a school in Texas. We have the person that became the first chief airline pilot in the entire United States, who is African American. We have really great examples of some phenomenal people. And I think that perhaps, and this is where the suggestion is, that perhaps we could work together to tell those stories. I don't know if they're out in shops and in posters, or out in, you know, in television screens. I'm not sure how it is, but one of the important things is that we've had a long time of invisible history for some. And I think that maybe it's time for us to recognize them, not just because of whatever their color of skin is or their background or religion, but because of the accomplishments and the good things that they have done, either for our community or for our country as a whole. I think that would be a really great project. I think it would be a worthwhile one. And it's something that everyone can collaborate. And so for me, I think that would be my suggestion, that we find ways that together with the business community, we can tell those stories. We've been collecting them now. And I'm sure there's plenty more. I mean, you know, not that we have them all, but I think it's that. And I think the final thing that I will say is that we as a city also have to come to terms with the fact that we do have a complicated and bumpy history, and that there is no way to escape that. And as we move through, I think we have to be also realistic about that.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing, Raina. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to recognizing our history and looking forward in creating our own history right now. So thank you for sharing. Leslie, I have you, followed by Stephanie and then Jafari.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm certainly honored to be part of the chamber, and particularly honored to be part of the DEI committee here in Naperville. I think I'm just so honored to follow Candace and Nate and Rena and kind of bounce off of their suggestions as well. I think what we have to think about is what do we want our Naperville community to be, and how do we want to be seen amongst our own community and from the outside for visitors, and feeling welcome and included in our committee. I believe it's an all-encompassing solution, which we certainly can't fix and address in this issue, but it needs to involve education, what's in our books, what are we saying to our teachers, how are we training our counselors, the admin, the principals, is everyone aware of diversity issues and racial issues that are in the school? There needs to be sensitivity training. My husband is African American. I have 2 adult biracial children, and that has always been a little tricky in schools, particularly years ago when the forms didn't so much accommodate multiracial children and their participation in school and how they're recognized. And there were several instances where my children were called down to the counselor's office and told that they had to pick one or the other race. So we just need to have some sensitivity in the education area and show the history of various different cultures in our community and reflect that diversity. I think that also needs to be reflected in our government, obviously with police and possibly, we've talked about in the DEI committee having recognition for various different businesses that participate intensively in DEI policies and are looking to make changes in their businesses. I'll speak to Candace, who already mentioned that, yes, we also have to have an individual and a personal responsibility to do what we can respectfully and kindly to maybe guide people who are interested in learning and how to make a change and how to think about things that they haven't really thought about, which isn't necessarily their fault. When you're in school and maybe brought up in a certain different way, you just aren't made aware of situations. But I particularly would like to focus on, and this further bounces off of what Rena was speaking about, the cultural aspect. We have education, community, government, and our individual responsibility. And within that community responsibility, I echo what Rena says, and maybe we can do that through the Naperville settlement. I have been thinking about some sort of cultural center. We need to address and recognize educationally the various different cultures in our community, whether it be our race, where we're from, and also the LGBTQ community included in that as well. And I think there needs to be great sensitivity in all of those areas. And within all of these areas, first has to come along an acknowledgement of the problem and address that, yes, there is a problem. And what do we need to do that to make people first get past the feeling that, well, you don't even get it, you won't even acknowledge that it exists, so let's do that first. But then let's talk about what we're reflecting out when we hold, I'm going to be perfectly honest, in the early years of RibFest, there was no way my husband and I, as an African American, and myself as a white person, are ever going to attend RibFest, because there were some very, I felt, controversial music main stage performers that I was absolutely uncomfortable with attending. So I do think we have to think about, are we offering events in RibFest that is attractive to all races and all cultures of our community? Are we only having white performers? What are we doing? Are we having performers on main stage in RibFest and Naperville Settlement that are attractive and that will bring in all races and cultures in our community? And I do think we can also use these cultural center or Naperville Settlement as an opportunity to educate and learn. My husband shared with me a story that he had read about a white high school student that said, I don't want to be racist. I want to be, fair and inclusive. He said, but really, what have Black people contributed to our society? He was honestly asking the question of what have they contributed, because he didn't really have an education or an awareness of what that was. And I think we need to do that for all communities. I have neighbors on either side of me that are of Indian and Asian descent. I've taken it upon myself to try to learn educationally how I can, understand their culture better. But it would be wonderful to also have that within our community, to share that.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
Those are my thoughts, and I appreciate the time to listen to them.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie. I have Stephanie and Jafaria, and then we're going to kick it over to Mayor Chirico after Jafaria speaks. One of our moderators here does have a bell, so around 2 minutes, if you hear what sounds like a reindeer running, that's what it sounds like to me, reindeer running. So just trying to make sure that we can continue to be concise and get back to all of that. But I love listening to everything that you all are saying, and I agree. Some of my fond memories in high school are the multicultural show at Naperville Central, but I digress. So I want to hear from you, Stephanie. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, thank you for letting me come on and speak. I'm a community member. I'm a 9-year Naperville resident. I have 2 kids in 203 now, 1 who graduated, and I'm a parent liaison for Success, which is a partnership between parents and School District 203 targeted to Black families. So I have really heard some heartbreaking stories in the past, 5 or 6 years since probably 4 or 5 years since I've been doing that. So it's really refreshing to me to hear some of these conversations about the bigger picture. I actually got a call for very specific stories that may have been discrimination against our youth, and I have one to share. If it seems that I'm kind of nervous and emotional, it's because I am, so just bear with me. So I wanted to share an incident that happened last summer when my nephew and his friends were in town for a basketball tournament. It was a sunny, breezy day, really warm, and like usual, I love to show off downtown Naperville to our guests, and so we were just in a mood to go downtown and enjoy some deep dish pizza. I called in our order to the restaurant early as suggested. It should have been a nice, easy, carefree lunch. We got there and the restaurant was about 25% full, so in other words, not at full capacity at all. So as our party of 6 walked into the restaurant, and actually it was Lou Malnati's downtown, we immediately got the look from the hostess. And if you're not sure what the look is, it's just one of those of discomfort maybe on their part. So I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but we wanted to eat. So I explained that we called in our order early and asked if our party of 6 could sit outdoors. And the hostess said, no, we're not sitting outdoors. So she grabbed a bunch of menus and started walking us to the back half of the restaurant. If you are familiar with that restaurant, there's kind of a front half, then there's a half wall, then there's a back half. We were the only people in the back half of the restaurant. So again, I asked, could we please sit outdoors? That's why we came here. And she said, well, we aren't sitting parties larger than 4. Looked outside, there were a couple parties with 6 or 7 people. So I didn't want to push it any further. I offered to divide us in 2 tables, the teens on one table, the adults at the other one. And she said she wasn't going to be able to accommodate us. I asked for the manager in charge. She said she was in charge. And something that was really frustrating is there were other employees walking around, and I got the feeling that none of them really wanted to stand up to the manager. So with her, the buck stopped. And, with us, what do we do? So I started taking pictures of the tables outside and asked her to restate her reasons and started writing them down. And as this happened, a waiter came over, grabbed 6 menus, sat us outside, and I asked if we could sit at different tables, and he said no. He treated us just like any other family, God bless him, and commented that the manager was just being ridiculous again and rolled his eyes. So I didn't mention, but my group was my family, who we're all Black, and 2 tall, strong Black teenagers, both 6'4", 6'5", beautiful dark skin, dreads. I thought about, is this the way we're dressed? But we were dressed as anyone else would be after leaving a basketball tournament anywhere. So when we sat down, my 11-year-old said, I think she just didn't want us to be at the front of the restaurant where people could see us. It didn't fit the Naperville image, and our family is reminded of this image when we walk downtown. Every time we walk past that mural, I know that's a different story and a different subject, but that's what is reflected back to us, and that's what my kids pick up on. They're happy to serve us as long as we're at the back of the restaurant. And while I was walking through, I saw my white friend, who was actually on this call, and her 2 daughters, and thought, that's all we want to do is sit in front of the restaurant and eat pizza. I can't say with 100% confidence that it was racism. Rarely will anyone come out and say, hey, I'm being racist. It's more, based on my experience, it was a little racist aggression. And, when things don't make sense, when people start making irrational excuses, your gut tells you to do that there's something illogical behind it. And racism is very illogical. But that's that's the veiled mask of racism. Often the offenders don't provide clear evidence. So in our house now, we have a name for situations where someone may be treating us racist, but we won't come out and say it. And unfortunately, we call that the Malnati effect. So it's kind of taken on something of its own. And I don't say that in anger. I don't say that in, it's not a bad way, but I just want to share that. So 2 more seconds. We love Naperville. We like it. We love all this community has to offer, and we love the schools. They are outstanding, but the benefits are eroded by situations like this. If you've never been in a situation, it's hard to understand that the scars may be deep and long lasting, and they sully your view of the environment and, just where you want to raise your family and raise them with good mental health and good social and emotional health. So I know I'm over my time. Thanks for listening. That's all I had.
No, thank you for sharing, Stephanie. And I think you just said a word, eroded, which I found very powerful to the situation. So thank you for sharing that. Jafaria, I'm going to let you speak, and then we're going to hear from Mayor Steve Chirico after that.
Good morning. I am happy to be on this call and being able to share some of my perspective. I definitely want to be very thoughtful of everyone's time. My name is Jafaria Vide. I am a parent here in Naperville. I've been here for 4 years. I'm also an owner of a business here as well called Empower Strength. And so wanted to share a few stories with you as time allots, as well as some productive suggestions that I have that could help start that process that could be really beneficial. So I would say the first thing is that I have friends who are business owners within Naperville, and just as a fellow parent interacting with them, and they're having conversations with me in light of what's going on right now in our country and definitely within Naperville. And so they're reaching out to me with concern, but also saying that I didn't know, I never thought about it. I haven't taught my children how to be anti-racist, or that there were ever any experiences that would be different that your children might have versus the ones that mine have. And so I feel like that's very telling. If they feel that way, then that their actions are not actively incorporating things that might be inclusive and very mindful of diversity and barriers that a lot of their customers and patrons might receive. And so in light of that, just a couple stories. One is one that's not my own, that was given to me by someone else. I have a friend, her son, middle school age, was out with a group of friends. He's the only Black student involved. And so after hanging out in downtown Naperville, they decided to go somewhere to, they went to this particular place, and all the children were able to receive water for free. When her Black child asked for water, the child was told that they couldn't have it. You had to purchase something in order to receive it. And so that was very embarrassing for that child after watching everyone else in their group receive that without having that stipulation. And then so some of the friends were upset about it as well. And then when the individual was called on it and asked by the parent later, well, why would you give anything to my child when you served all the others? And then was told, oh, well, I didn't realize it. Yes, he could have water, but it will be 50 cents or 75 cents. So, it's a clear demarcation of different treatment. And it's something that seems very, very small, but that happens all the time. I've seen it. I've witnessed it when I've been in another large coffee shop in downtown Naperville, just the variation of treatment of students who are Black versus students who are not. And then personally, there is a business that I work very well with, and I happened to be dressed in, I had a hat on and a sweatshirt and workout leggings. And so I came into the store, and so I was able to observe how other people were being treated. They were being treated nicely and, just being helped or serviced. And so when I was approached, it was, I was given a look that was a bit conspicuous, I would say. and, you know, more like, can I help you? As if I shouldn't be there. And so that's when I let them know, oh, I'm actually waiting for so-and-so. She has a package for me in the back. And then I incorporated in the conversation somehow that my poster having my picture is actually up in their facility. And then the entire spirit or energy completely shifted. Oh, hi, how are you? But clearly I felt that I was assessed because I was Black, or because I was Black plus the way I was dressed, but I really wasn't dressed any differently than any customer who was in the store as well. So those are the two stories that I wanted to share. Relative to suggestions, I think that it's critical and key that we open the dialogue between the businesses and our Black community directly. Me as a mom of sons, I actively remind my son, you know, who is a little taller, don't go into any of the shops with your hands in your pockets. You know, he's also taller than a lot of his white friends as well. Sometimes going into these places, wanting to make sure that he's not a target, that people don't assume that he's in there to steal something. And it's so automatic. It's like an everyday occurrence. It's like as simple as remembering to tie your shoes. That we have to prepare our children. We have a daughter as well, just about how you might be profiled or treated differently just because of the color of your skin, and these preparations that you need to take to make sure things don't become catastrophic or detrimental to you. So opening that conversation, that dialogue between businesses, not just between us adults in the Black community, but also with that youth, the youth that go after school and on weekends to hang out, so that they can feel comfortable and they can feel included as if they are a conscious thought. So I would ask businesses to think about not what have you done to be neutral, but what have you done to actively invest in a policy of inclusion and awareness. And so I have talked with Kim White and Kristen Fitzgerald, and I know there's some ideas on the table about stickers that could go on the outside of businesses that are a positive statement about inclusivity. But I would suggest maybe even a step further, because often a business might have a motto or a mantra or a thought, but whether or not that translates down to that individual person or that staff person at Luminati's or wherever else, how about when you have done that inclusion and that implicit bias training, maybe your staff members receive a rubber band, you know, those rubber bands that have a nice positive statement that shows that they individually have received that training and that they support that that mantra of the business, but it also is a sign of accountability as well. So I think those might be a positive step to opening up the dialogue and creating an environment of trust. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Jafaria, for sharing your story and for the good suggestions. I appreciate it. Now I'm going to pitch it over to Mayor Steve Chirico, followed by Mary Lou Worley, and then Dr. Goke Pariola. So Mayor, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts.
Well, thank you. Good morning, you guys. Thanks for having me here this morning. You know, first of all, I'd like to thank the whole committee who's putting this together. This is a great effort, and I think obviously a very worthy goal and something that we need to focus on. And I think it also really speaks to the type of organization that the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce is, and really strives to be the best and have the highest standards. And so that's, I think, a great initiative. Thanks, Kim, and to all the committee. And I think that also, and I've said this a number of times, that change, especially social change like this, really important and long-lasting change, really doesn't start in government. I mean, it starts in the community. It starts in households. It starts in places of worship, and it starts in businesses. And businesses have a very unique responsibility to be a part of these solutions, and a social responsibility, and in how they treat their employees, and how they treat their customers, in fairness and equity. And all of these things are you know, we spend as much time in our businesses and our jobs as we do it in our homes. And so all of these things are really critically important to having a strong community and a great community. And so we as business leaders and as, oftentimes policy makers within our businesses, we need to really step up and make sure that we're doing everything we can within that environment to lead with the best example and just be the best that we can be. So I think that, with the chamber, getting involved and taking on these topics, it's people, I think people need to accept the fact that businesses need to be at the table too and need to be members of the community who are working towards this goal as well. It's not just, our religious leaders or our social service leaders or our government leaders. It's our business community also. They have an important role in this whole thing. So again, I think this is a great effort here. Thank you again for doing it, and thank you for the committee and for all those who are brave enough to come here and courageous enough to come here and speak. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for your willingness to join in. And I asked the mayor to join. He said, absolutely, I'll be there. And it's awesome to know that you're listening to us as well and really appreciate your support. So thank you. Mary Lou, I have, followed by Dr. Goke Pariola and then Dave Della Teresa. Mary Lou.
There. Okay, hi, thank you very much. This is such a wonderful effort that's been going on for a long time with many leaderships, as Mayor speaks of. It is local, it is personal, it is communal, it is global. I'll share with you in my global travels, I have experienced the same type of inclusion and exclusion of certain communities of color, of not color, and it is a visceral feeling, both of joy and of terror. So I can empathize there. The story I'd like to share is back in the 90s. I was managing small, humble properties in downtown Naperville, and people would call to rent. And I showed it to a Black family that came, husband and wife with their children. And I extolled the location. Your kids could walk from pre-K to their master's degree from here. They're going to build a skate park someday. We got the beach across the street. All of these things highlighting. And, many people came to look. And it wasn't until after that meeting, that showing in particular, that I thought, well, maybe they were just testing out to see if this was a friendly place, if someone was going to show us a house that we could actually rent, or if they were going to be cold or standoffish. The point of my story is that I'm hoping that some of these stories that are positive experiences get shared as well. When we look at the stories of our founding, hey, Joe Naper was a squatter. There's a lot that's not being told. The doctrine of discovery, the loss of the land of the Native Americans. We can bring all this up, not as a replacement of history with today's experiences in the 21st century, but as a process of blending. The community that was shared with the farmers back then and the businesses back then did bring prosperity. And it was highlighted in 1931 with what can we do together physically? Let's buy 45 acres. Let's build a beach. It'll take a sow's ear and make a silk purse out of it. It was abandoned, these quarries. And we did it together in the midst of a depression where 5 cents meant as much as $500 to the community pool, hoping for the best community we can be in the future. We did the same thing in '81 with the Riverwalk. What can we do together? Physically, community, emotionally, what brings us together? So I'd like us to, I think we're at a point where these stories are very important. When I walked into the India exhibit at Naper Settlement and saw Vasavi on the wall, I'm like, wow, Vasavi. So some people are feeling replaced by history and insignificant and wrong. And I think we need to value where teaching, teachers are very well trained to help us process stories and blend stories of community. And we are at a point where we have an exceptional opportunity because of our visibility and our strength that has brought people here to become involved. They don't just come here and plunk down and say, hey, I found a safe place and we're just going to live our life. They get involved. Look at all the number of people that are here today on this experience that the Chamber's giving us to talk about how can we do things better together. So there's so much that can be done, and I'm very optimistic. And it doesn't set aside the visceral feelings of exclusion, disappointment, or the celebratory things we do that may not be inclusive. And it's education. I'm excited about the future, and I'm hoping maybe as a tangible thing for the business community and all the other leaders to say, hey, we have a bicentennial coming up in 2031. We have 10 years to prepare to be the community we want to be, to have something visible on the landscape and in our hearts that is going to make us continue to be prosperous, to be whole, to send out men and women into the world that can spread this. It's an exciting time, and there's much to be said and done, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Mary Lou. And you mentioned education, which is just the perfect segue into our Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at North Central College, Dr. Abiodun Goke Pariola, or GP. Would love to hear from you as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. As many of you know, North Central College has been an integral part of Naperville since 1870. We've been an active member of the Chamber for over 50 years. And today's topic is of special importance and interest to us as an educational institution. A lot of our faculty and staff live in this community. And for much of the year, this is also home to many of our students, particularly because we're very close to downtown Naperville. So we draw upon this community for sustenance and are very eager to be partners in the cities and the Chamber's efforts to become an even more inclusive community for all. As the best faculty know, education is not just about talking, about lecturing. It is about listening, active listening and learning. So I was particularly pleased at the way you've set up this session today, that it's a listening session. For us, ensuring that our students feel welcome and safe during their time in Naperville, in this college, is very important to us. Because without that sense of safety, of feeling welcome, it's very much harder for us to deliver on a key goal of our mission and vision. After all, what are we trying to do? We're trying to work with students, with young adults for a period of 4 to 5 years of their lives. With what goal? So that they can come out of here on their lifelong journey as better citizens, but also as people who are prepared to deal with unscripted problems that we are going to face. They need a sense of well-being regardless of color, regardless of race, regardless of identity, so that they can go out and live lives of meaning and purpose, and above all, to live lives of reconciliation. I have lived here for about 5 years, and I have learned a lot by listening to a number of people who've talked today. Because their experiences, I thought I had a very good sense, and I do, but it's just, it's touching to hear those experiences. And part of what is insidious about this is that it really doesn't matter if you're treated as an outsider. It doesn't matter how high you've come. I remember about 2-3 years ago, my family had to relocate to North Carolina temporarily. And I was looking for an apartment. My assistant called. There was one not far from Washington Middle where our older daughter went to school. And I was told it wasn't ready. Then a week later we called, and I called and spoke to the person. Obviously you can listen to me and know that I'm not from this neck of the woods. And suddenly, well, she said, well, smoking is not allowed. And I'm wondering, you've never seen me. I have never seen it. How do you know that I smoke? And I said, I didn't smoke. And it just went on for like 2-3 weeks. My assistant would call, our realtor would come, and finally the apartment was rented. Well, I don't think it takes a genius to know that there's something going on here. I have had very wonderful experiences here, but when you have those kinds of experiences, even if it's one, it leaves a very sour taste in your mouth, and it makes you ask questions. And so for us, many times the challenge is to balance the good with the not so good. But we need to call that out every time, because candor is very important to building strong communities. And as I watch the protest, and I want to focus on the protest, not the vandalism of a small group has gone on, that people who feel uncomfortable, feel threatened. No, candor and speaking out is a part of what makes a community vibrant. We have a Yoruba saying, I'm originally from Nigeria, that says if you have siblings, if you have spouses, if you have friends, that they go into a room to have a tete-a-tete. And every time they come out, they are backslapping and high-fiving. They've not told one another the truth. Because there are times you will tell each other things, you come out, your faces will be drawn, but that's important for growth. And I think for us as an institution, we are confronting some of the same issues. So I leave that with us today, that we should not shy away from candor. We should not shy away from disagreement. Those are the things that are important for us to grow. And I say finally, it's not even just about race. Think if people had not challenged the norm in this country over 100 years ago, where women were counted as property like sheep. They didn't have the right to vote. Can you imagine that, what I tell that to my children? So much has changed. Or if good people of all races and colors did not join together in the 60s to march and protest, and that's still going on, I could not be married to my wife today. I could have been lynched just for talking to her on the street. So I'm grateful that you've organized this session. And again, we're very eager to be partners with the Chamber and the community as we try to make this a more inclusive community. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the partnership from North Central. And I want to continue my active listening. So I'm going to kick it over to Dave and then Kristen and Mike, and we're going to close it up, trying to be respectful of everybody's time, but I'm not done listening yet. So thank you again, GP. And Dave, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Thanks. So my name is Dave Delaturza. I'm the Executive Director at the Naperville Public Library. I'm also part of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion team for the Chamber. And I just want to thank Caitlin again for starting that team. I'm very excited about it, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. I was thinking about whether to share my personal story or not, and I saw some comments in the chat about younger generations, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. So so I'm a white man, but I have an adopted Black daughter. And last year we had an interesting experience where she was 3 years old in a Naperville daycare. And she was having some issues, just going through some stuff. We were just getting some weird behavior from the people there. And kind of like Stephanie said earlier, it's that intangible thing that you can't really explain. But she was having some kind of behavior issues at the school, and my husband went in to talk to them about it, and he just said, you know, I just want to let you know they've already written her off. They don't want her there. Just so you know, they're definitely going to be, you know, they're going to be finding a way to get rid of our family from this daycare. And I said, oh, I can't. I don't think that's possible. Why would they do that? I've seen other kids behaving in the same way. I've seen, you know, plenty of other white kids, boys, behaving in the same way that she's been doing. So I don't think they would kick us out of the school. But unfortunately, you know, you start to, I guess, pick up, and I started to kind of pay more attention. And the treatment that we were getting was very different than what the other kids were getting. It went pretty quickly from your daughter is causing a few problems at school to we don't want your daughter here at the school anymore, in about a matter of a month. And it was one of those things where the more we went in, some of the parents were reluctant to talk with us. Some of the administrators were just, the excuses just seemed kind of odd and off, and you can't just put your finger on it. You can't say this is racist, but it felt like it. And yeah, and I guess one thing I just wanted to say is kind of what Stephanie's point was you know, sometimes you can't point to it and say definitely this was that, but I think just listening to people and listening to their stories is really important, and saying, you know, even though I can't prove something, my feeling in that moment was this, and I saw the inequity there. I saw other people being treated differently, and so just listening to that. But I also wanted to say we had, although we had a lot of the parents at that school who did not, who we've run into after the situation and have actively avoided us, we did have one family go in and actually stand up for us and talk to the administration there and say, you know, I can't believe this happened. And I really appreciated that. So just having those people that are willing to speak up who maybe the situation doesn't affect them, I think is really important. I think it's everyone's responsibility. It can't just be the responsibility of someone to say, this is my story and now I have to do something about it. I think we just all have to do something about it. And I think it's just important that we all listen to each other and take each other's stories seriously and then say, what is it that I can do? So that's all I wanted to say. So thanks.
Thank you, Dave. I'm going to hear from Kristen and Mike, and then we're going to close it out with Carly. So Kristen, I'd like to hear from you.
So I also want to thank the Chamber for pulling together this listening session. I'm so glad also for the establishment of the DEI committee. I think it's essential that our community look at these issues at this time. And this is something that the school district has been focusing on for some time, and I'll call your attention to our recent equity resolution, which lays out some of our essential commitments, both on equity and on eliminating systemic racism. But it's interesting, at the school district, the more actions we've taken, the more we have to take. And so I want to talk about one of the essential actions was opening up the dialogue. And I want to thank the many, many students, parents, families who shared their very painful experiences, because that was how we could honestly confront the desperate need for change. Our students and families are experiencing racism in their schools and in their community. And so I really want to commend the Chamber for opening up this conversation. And I want to quote one of our fathers at one of our listening sessions earlier last year, that said, you know, I commend you for the conversation, but the conversation must be about transformation. And I believe that we have the leaders, the resources, and the heart in this community that we can transform our community. And as our school district has committed its tireless resources and its tireless work to achieve those ends, I want to commend the Chamber and the other leaders who are on this call today for their commitments, that we all do the work necessary to transform our community, so that we don't have the experiences that our beautiful friends have shared today. So I'm looking forward to working together with you on all of these essential issues. And again, I am so appreciative for beginning that really important dialogue so that we together can work together to transform our community.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristen. I have Mike Isaac, and we're going to close out with Carly Johnson. And yeah, thank you for sharing. Mike?
Thank you, Kaylin, and thank you for everybody that joined the call today. You know, I'm looking here and I'm seeing almost 125 folks that are, let's say, sharing the same passion that each one of us share. You know, I want to echo and agree with many of the statements made from Mayor Chirico a few moments ago. I'm honored to be a part of the DEI committee and to help this discussion. And I think what we have discovered is that education on this topic is really step one. And quite frankly, before that is really realizing that this is real and this is really going on. And the stories that were shared today, honestly, they should have never happened. And it's easy for me to say that, but I think that right now we have the power to change the future. And as CEO of a local business here in Naperville, we have about 100 employees, and we take this topic very serious, and we open dialogue just like we have right now inside of our organization. And I agree with Mayor Chirico that businesses absolutely have an obligation to help form this community. You know, not only do businesses form the community within inside of their own four walls, you know, in my four walls, we have 100 employees, but we also have a lot of influence on the consumer side, which quite frankly, that ecosystem is hundreds of thousands of people. And I think that the business community, just like our organization, can make some real steps into making some changes. So, you know, whenever we have dialogue such as this with inside of our group, I often talk at the end about what are the deliverables and what are the action items that are going to incite long-term sustainable change. And, you know, I would ask that this group and folks that are on the call, there's a lot of folks that are in the community to reach out to the DEI committee or reach out to the chamber and feel free to give your suggestions. You know, there are numerous things that we've talked about as a DEI committee, such as a toolbox for businesses and really helping to put together the information to help educate. You know, I think that what we've realized through some of the dialogue is that some people don't really know where to start. And that's okay. And it's okay to say that. I think that really a lot of the business community has the opportunity to raise their hand and say, hey, I don't really know what this means, but I want to be involved and I want to help for long-term change. And, you know, we have to treat this just like we do inside of our own homes. I have twin boys that are right above my head here. And we have dialogue very similar to this quite frequently. They're only 6. And, you know, they're so young and naive that, you know, the response when we talked about the recent situations, they would say, well, Daddy Mike, this isn't fair. And you're absolutely right, it's not fair. And guess what? Your generation and my generation and the generation before mine have the opportunity to make some changes, and we have some opportunity to change viewpoints and hopefully incite some long-term change. And again, Kaylin, thank you for allowing me to speak here for a few moments, and I would absolutely encourage those folks that are on the call to continue to speak out and continue to give your suggestions. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. And Carly, close us out, please. And I've got a few more words after you say something. I got to find you to spotlight.
Perfect. All right. Hi, everyone. There's been a lot of thanks going around, so I'm going to skip that and jump right to the point. But to also kind of go off of what Mike just said, and I appreciate this. And I put this quote in our chat, and it's one of my favorites, that accountability can feel like an attack when you're not willing to change that behavior. And so one of my favorite quotes, and you'll hear this all the time, is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so yes, I appreciate everyone on this call, and I appreciate the amazing work from our leadership here, but also this is what we should be doing, right? This is what the chamber and the mayor and us as board members too, this is the minimum of what we should be doing. And so one of the things I really challenge everyone, especially all the white folks in this group right now, is that to really take a step back and understanding why you are doing this, why we are doing it. We don't want this to be some sort of like performance. Our goal here is to not only save lives, but to make our community members and our businesses really thrive. So the last thing I want to end on, and to remember as we're having these hard conversations and we're hearing these stories, and we're really pouring our heart and soul into this work, is to remember our intent versus our impact. And we might have the biggest, best, most wonderful hearts to change our community and our world and to make all of this, you know, terrible things go away. But like everyone has said, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of community. And sometimes we're going to mess up. And our intent might be, oh, I am sharing this story for this reason, or I'm doing this for this reason. But maybe our impact might not be there, and we just need to listen. So again, I want to thank everyone, and let's keep doing it. Let's keep going. So thanks.
Yeah, well, thank you, Carly. Also a big thank you again, circling back to Mayor Chirico and Dr. Goke Pariola from North Central, as well as Kim White for joining us here. And I'm going to pitch it back to Kim, but one thing before real quick is you guys are going to get an email today, and it's going to have the notes from this chat. There's been some fantastic things going on in the chat. I'm trying to read and listen, and it's fantastic. So I'm going to send out the chat, and I'm also going to send out a survey, real quick 3-minute survey, figuring out again what we can do. I like listening, but let's start working on some solutions. It may take a while, but let's get into that. So please take a few minutes to fill out that survey. And thank you for your time today. And you've heard a lot about the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, so I'm going to pitch it over one last time to Kim White, who is our chair of that committee. And truly, thank you for going on this journey with me. When I called you up last winter and asked you to take this on, I'm not sure this is what we looked for, but you know what? I think this is best case scenario because the conversation's being had. So, Kim.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kaylin, and thanks everyone for being on the call. You know, the stories we heard are heartbreaking, and I'm getting all emotional right now, I'm sorry. And really, you know, tough to hear. You know, I was reminded listening to Stephanie and Jafaria about a time when my husband and I went to a restaurant downtown, and after watching others come in after us and being seated and served, and we were completely ignored, we got up and walked out. I was reminded of a store that I love downtown Naperville. When it opened up, I was excited that it opened up in downtown, and I would frequent that store a couple of times, and I was given the look that Jafaria and Stephanie spoke of. And I've now chosen to take my business to that same store, but in Oak Brook, because I'm not given that look when I go in that store. As GP shared, you know, my family has had lots of great experiences in this town, but it's the stories, it's the experiences that you have that make you feel less than that really stand out. I agree with our mayor, business leaders need to be a part of the change. In the DEI committee, we look forward to working with the businesses to bring about that change and to affect the needed change in our community. So I'm sorry I'm getting all emotional here, but thank you all again for joining. And Kaylin, thank you. Again, I don't think I knew what this was gonna turn into, but I'm glad that you really started this committee. And I can't say thanks enough to the 17 others that joined me on the committee. So thank you.
Thank you for your leadership. And like I said, to all of you for taking the step in the right direction by showing up. And showing up sometimes is the start of a great conversation. So thank you for joining us this morning. And be on the lookout for our survey and the ways that we can continue to move the conversation forward for that lasting change that we all keep talking about. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.